This is the second module of the North Carolina Department of Transportation Erosion Sediment Control Certification Training for Level 2. In this module, we'll be covering the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System, or NPDES, the stormwater permit for NCDOT. The NPDES program is a result of the Clean Water Act of 1973. It directed the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency to control the discharge of pollutants to surface waters. One of these pollutants is sediment. This responsibility is given to our Department of Environmental Quality, or DEQ, administered by the Division of Energy, Mining, and Land Resources, or DEMLR. The North Carolina Department of Transportation obtains a permit from DEQ that authorizes the discharge of stormwater from all of the following which NCDOT oversees: roadways and their construction, ferries, stored materials, and railroads. This is called the Transportation Separate Stormwater Sewer System, or TS4. Note, the term sewer is an old one referring to underground pipes, but not necessarily meaning to carry sewage. The permit requires NCDOT to control potential pollutants through 6 different efforts. One of these is for construction sites, which is the focus of our discussions today. There are actually 2 programs that are designed to minimize pollution from construction sites. One is a Construction General Permit, or NCGO1, and the other is mandated by the Sedimentation Pollution Control Act, or SPCA. They both are part of the Stormwater Pollution Prevention Plan, often referred to as the SWIP. There are a number of aspects to the NCGO1 permit and the SWIP, but let's focus on the materials handling and inspections. These are particularly important for Level 2 people. Materials is a broad term covering just about everything on the construction site. Remember, we are talking about prevention, or ways to ensure that these do not become pollutants. We'll go through each of these individually. Flocculants are used to reduce the muddiness or turbidity of runoff. And we'll talk about those in a module, Best Management Practices, later. Some of the important management practices include selecting products that are approved by the state, applying them in the right place and amount, ponding the water after treatment to allow the flocculated sediment to settle, and storing the flocculants correctly. Vehicles and equipment involve a great number of fluids, which can be pollutants if they are released. If these are spilled onto the ground, or worse, into the water, the material has to be collected and disposed of properly to avoid discharges off the site. In this picture, a track hoe has been stored on a pad that will contain any leaks that may occur, a good insurance measure. Waste materials include building materials, paints, solvents, litter, and sanitary waste. All of these have to be stored away from storm drains or surface waters and disposed of properly. Pesticides, which includes a wide variety of products, need to be stored according to state regulations and the label restrictions. They need to be kept in their original container with the label intact. Generally, storage should be far away from potential pollutant pathways such as wells, storm drains, and surface waters. Only the material needed for a particular operation should be on site. Concrete is a potential pollutant because it is highly alkaline or high in pH before it cures and can be toxic in surface waters. Concrete or cement slurry needs to be contained on the site. Concrete washouts, or concrete trucks rinse down, should be more than 50 feet from storm drains, creeks, ponds, etc. Washouts should be allowed to harden and then disposed of properly. This is an example of a concrete washout area. Notice the plastic liner, and that's where the concrete will be washed into and collected and disposed of, usually by burying it. Soil can also be a pollutant if it's allowed to get into streams, so soil stockpiles need to be more than 50 feet from storm drains and surface waters. In this picture, the stockpile is actually in direct contact with a stream, a major violation. Even small amounts of pollutants have to be controlled. In this case, the level 2 person should stop this operation until the concrete runoff is controlled and prevented from getting into the drain. Inspections and good records are very important in being in compliance with SWIP. In fact, if a state or NCDOT inspector arrives on your site, the first thing they will ask for is your inspection record. All erosion and sediment control practices should be inspected once a week or within 24 hours of a 1 inch or greater rain event, that is, in 24 hours. In some areas, the North Carolina Division of Water Resources may require more frequent inspections. This will be on the erosion and sediment control plan. There are exceptions for idle and completed projects, which we'll go over in just a minute. The daily rainfall amount also has to be recorded as well. We'll also review this later. Always have these records available for review. There are a number of standard forms that are used for inspections and record keeping. This is your weekly rainfall and phase form. Note that if there is no rain, you just put a line through that box to indicate that. Phases of grading which are occurring also should be noted for each week. Idle projects only have to be inspected every 2 weeks, but also after a 1 inch rain. These are defined as projects with no activity in 21 days and which are stabilized with temporary vegetation. Completed projects only have to be inspected every 30 days or after a 1 inch rain. These are projects which have no further work other than to establish a permanent stand of vegetation. For the phase of grading record, often there are many phases underway on a project, so each week just note all those that are present. For the signatures, both you and the NCDOT representative will sign, but only after the week is complete and any corrective actions are completed. We'll address corrective actions later. Another form is a record of your inspections of all stormwater discharge outfalls, or SDOs. These are places where runoff leaves the project and discharges into waters of the state. These will be identified on the erosion and sediment control plan. And note that not all discharge points are SDOs. On the SDO inspection form, any corrective action should be noted as either routine or urgent, which would correspond to the action required within routine 5 days or urgent 24 hours, respectively. Once corrected, that date should also be noted. The NCDOT representative can overrule the action level. Note if any sediment has been deposited off the project and how much, such as 5-gallon bucket or 10-gallon buckets. Both the NCDEQ and DEMLR and the Department of Water Resources will have to be notified of all off-site deposits. Also note if surface waters have been muddied by the discharge. The pictures you see here indicate areas that may or may not be SDOs. On the left, we have a skimmer basin which is discharging into some woods, which may not be a point of discharge, SDO. On the right, we have a outlet for a silt fence, which clearly is an SDO because you can see the water just beyond it. As noted, record an R or a U for the action level, the date, and that the NCDOT person can actually change that from an R to a U if they want. Sediment deposited, well, you have to answer yes or no and how much, and you have to notify Demler and the Department or Division of Water Resources within 24 hours if it's deposited in surface waters or wetlands. Note how much turbidity there is and if it's increased as a result of this discharge. To illustrate how an SDO form might be filled out, here's an example. The first issue was with a skimmer basin, where you can see it says repair baffles were knocked down. This was an R because there's little chance this would result in sediment discharges. The second issue was a silt fence outlet, which is on the edge of the project. This got a U because a failure here could cause sediment to be discharged off the site. The amount of sediment recovered was also noted, less than a 5-gallon bucket by hand. Note that the mark was placed in each box just to show that these items were considered. Aside from sediment, the inspector should also be looking for other pollutants as well. For instance, if an oily sheen was seen on a wetland project, on a wetland outside the project, it might be an oil spill, or it might be just natural. The way to tell is you throw an object into the sheen, and if it breaks apart, it's considered natural. Otherwise, it may be a petroleum product from the project, and it should be addressed just like sediment. All of our erosion and sediment control devices also need to be inspected as well as the SDOs. In this case, however, we only need to note the devices if they need maintenance. So these are some examples of devices that need to be inspected. So this is the example of an inspection form. In each case, the corrective action is noted and the date that it was completed. So it's important that you are clear about which ones are needing attention and where their location is with the station number. As with the stormwater discharge outfalls, the priority is given to problems which could result in sediment discharges from the project or a U. The date of the correction will also go on this form. This is an example of an inspection form. In each case, the corrective action is noted and the date it was completed. Note that the construction entrance pad, which is supposed to prevent mud from getting tracked onto roads, gets a very high priority. Here's a repair construction entrance pad, U. Here's a question. Which of these is a stormwater discharge outfall and needs to be recorded on the form? Hopefully everybody agrees that it's where it discharges to state waters, and that should be noted on the plan. There are two options for recording rainfall on a project. One is to use a web-based system developed by the state. That predicts how much rain will fall in any location. The other is to use a rain gauge, lower right, which should be in an open area away from trees and structures. Only use one of these options. A few reminders about record keeping. First, if 1 or more inches of rain falls, the whole project needs to be inspected, as this amount could create problems. Very large projects may require multiple rain gauges. Be sure the gauges are far away from trees and other objects in the sky, and make sure that you're only using one of these two methods for estimating rain. A few reminders about record keeping on NCDOT projects. This needs to be done on all land disturbing projects. The Level II certified person is in charge of keeping the records. The form should be completed every 7 days or within a 24-hour period of a 1 inch or greater rainfall. This may mean inspecting during a rain event if it's still raining the day after a 1 inch event. If the forms are not filled out correctly, a violation might be issued. We're going to go through a simulated inspection to review all that we've just been over. The idea is that you have a printed version of this inspection form and you would fill it out based on the following information, and then we'll review what should have been entered. So for this week of August 2nd through 8th, we're doing a routine inspection. Grubbing is nearly complete and grading is underway. Erosion and sediment controls are in place. A 1 inch of rain occurred on August 2nd and another 0.4 inches on August 7th. There was a hydraulic fluid leak on August 2nd and a sheen noticed on a sediment basin. The 1 inch rain resulted in runoff bypassing a silt fence and a sediment basin with sediment in surface water. The baffles in this basin 5.3 need repair, and at several locations, temporary silt diversions or ditches were installed without their rock check dams. Here's an example of an erosion and sediment control plan sheet for this project. It's hard to see at the scale, but the box that is blown up shows some of the details related to this inspection. So this is the form that, as you recall, you use to record rainfall and grading phases. Based on the information we gave, you can see the rain noted here. Got the 1 inch, and we have the 0.4 inches. And also we've noted that there is 3 different types of phasing going on the project at this time. So remember, we had a fluid leak. So here you can see how the issues were noted. The hydraulic fluid was cleaned up that day, as well as removal of sediment in the creek. Baffles were also repaired the next day, and the state agencies were also notified. So here you can see a blow up of the form with the urgent for the hydraulic fluid leak and the urgent for the silt fence problems. The problem in the ditch was very simple, just needed to install those check dams to make sure that it was not eroding. So in summary, one suggestion is to do your inspection each Monday, so this captures anything that happened over the weekend. Remember, not all outfalls from the project are considered stormwater discharge outfalls. When filling out inspection forms, be sure that dates of inspection and corrections are included. No blanks on the forms, because we want to ensure the inspection was completed, and then get signatures as soon as the week is done and repairs are completed. The objective of all this effort is to preserve and protect water quality. That's the end of this module.